Are you looking to grow revenues, increase profitability, or obtain financing? If so, you came to the right place.
Running a business is all about leadership. How do you become a better leader? Learn from the successful entrepreneurs and business owners how to lead your organization more effectively. That's why we created Leadership Live at 8:05, Talking Small Business, to help you succeed with your host, Andrew Frazier, Business Growth Pro and CFO and founder of the Small Business Pro University. Every Tuesday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern, we're joined by experienced entrepreneurs and business owners who share their secrets to success via live stream. Also, every Friday morning, we release a new podcast episode. Either way, you will learn about developing your business leadership skills from our roster of highly performing guest experts. Leadership Live is one of the many valuable resources provided through the Small Business Pro University, empowering business owners to learn, profit, and grow. Find out more at sbprou.com.
Okay, hold on one sec. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Leadership Live at 8:05, Talking Your Small Business. I'm your host, Andrew Frazier, and excited to be here once again with you on Tuesday evening. I have a great guest, Evan Frazier, tonight. Happens to be my brother. We are having a little bit of technical difficulties, so I'm going to play a short video while we try and work those out. So I appreciate your patience and understanding, and just give us a couple minutes to do that. While we're doing that, you can learn a little bit more about Small Business Pro University. Many small businesses experience low or no revenue growth, and the owners are not making enough money. I founded Small Business Pro University to help you break that cycle by empowering you with greater knowledge and enhanced skills to lead your organization more effectively. Over the past 15 years, I have collaborated with organizations like the Small Business Development Center, Rising Tide Capital, Empower the Village, NJMEP, Rutgers University, and SCORE to work one-on-one with over 1,000 business owners and teach tens of thousands of people about business. My experience includes serving as a naval officer, managing businesses, graduating from MIT, earning an MBA from NYU, and achieving the CFA designation, which has prepared me to accomplish my mission of helping 1,000,008 business owners to sell more, maximize profit, and finance growth by 2028. My vision is to create the ultimate business ecosystem for entrepreneurs. Small Business Pro University empowers entrepreneurs like you to run their businesses more professionally and create sustainable enterprises. We employ my proven proprietary Masterpreneur Playbook framework to guide your journey along the Masterpreneur path and facilitate your Masterpreneur evolution to work on your business and scale faster and easier. Small Business Pro University provides access to valuable resources, partnerships, and relationships that will help you to sell more, maximize profit, and finance growth. Our Masterpreneur initiatives include the Small Business Pro Network, 100+ expert-led multimedia courses, intensive training workshops, Spanish language training, Leadership Live at 8:05 live stream and podcast, in-person Power Breakfast events, and advisory coaching, consulting, and training services. Again, hold on a sec. Okay, StreamYard. Okay, welcome back. Here on the show, still having a little bit of technical difficulties, but I'm gonna try and get my brother on. But he's here on the phone with me. So why don't we start by just getting a chance to hear from him, and he'll say hello, and we'll figure out how to get him on the screen. But excited to have my brother Evan Frazier. He is the president and CEO of the Advanced Leadership Institute out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and you'll get a chance to learn a little bit about him. And our topic today is making a profit as a nonprofit. Many times you think of as a nonprofit as something different, but a nonprofit is really a business. It's just a different type of business. And it's not that they're not supposed to bring any money in. It's just they're supposed to use the money that they get to further their mission rather than use the money and it goes to an owner. So especially now more than ever before, as a nonprofit, you have to be able to generate income. You can't just rely on donations. So, as a nonprofit, I always say it's actually harder to run a smaller nonprofit than it is to run a small business. So he's done it successfully. So that's why I wanted to have him on the show so he could talk to us a little bit about that. Ev, you want to say anything real quick? Say hello.
Sure. Hello, everybody. So great to be here with my brother Andrew here. And I think the lead-in that he shared is really a great one because I've had the really fortunate opportunity to work for different size nonprofits. Currently, with the nonprofit, the one that I had vision for and was a part of founding with some great folks. And been pleased to be able to build this organization into an organization that has a solid footing and is built for while it's tough work to build an organization, any small business, including nonprofits, it takes a lot of hard work. But as Andrew was mentioning, nonprofit is really a designation. It's saying that the profits that you do get go back into the organization to further the mission, and that's different than sending out to investors or those who have claims to the business. So it's a different approach. Now, I used to work for an organization. We were an $18 billion nonprofit. So just to give you a sense. So, of course, they were very good at generating bottom line profit. But again, it wasn't going to shareholders. It was reinvested back into the business so that you could grow the organization. And those are the predominant, that's a big difference between the kind of small private enterprise versus the nonprofit enterprise.
Definitely. And, you like it. Most other entrepreneurs and business owners and leaders have had an interesting journey and really have some great experience and perspective based on that journey. I know your journey pretty well, but mostly everybody else doesn't. So it would be great if you could take a few minutes and talk a little bit about your journey.
Sure. So, so my background is really a combination of corporate, nonprofit, and small and large organizations, right? And so I'll just going way back, for when we grew up, really first enterprise was as a paper boy, and Andy and I both had a paper route when we were young kids. I was 8, and Andy was either 9 or 10. I can't remember which one, but we had a paper route where we had customers had to deliver papers 7 days a week for like 6 years, and we did it, through all the other activities and those kind of things, and touching valuable lessons. So really started there. That gave me a really strong grounding and base for entrepreneurship and small business responsibility and all those kind of things. Ended up working, doing some other responsibilities. Got into the hospitality industry for working with the regional kind of restaurant chain when I was in high school. That led to an opportunity to go into that in college. I went to Cornell University, the School of Hotel Administration, which was really an amazing place, world renowned for hospitality leadership. While we were there, again, Andy and I linked up. We created a small business called Urban Creations, and really, again, learn more about business structure and how small businesses orient. But also, when I was in college, I had the opportunity to run a number of organizations. I had the privilege. I served as the president of it was called the Minority Business Student Association. When I was, I think it was a sophomore, I had the opportunity to serve as president. And then there was another group there. I had a chance to, help take an organization from being a local campus group to creating a national organization in the hospitality field. And we kind of created that organization and grew it over a number of years into a separate 501c3 organization. And so I'm very proud of the work that happened there. When I graduated from Cornell and went into working in the restaurant industry, I worked at the corporate office in human resources and ended up starting their first community relations department. I loved the work that I did there. Again, 6 years with a company called Eden Park Restaurants at the time. And then I left there to really broaden my horizons. Took the time to look for opportunities to kind of get way out of the box. I wanted to, kind of expand my horizons. I ended up accepting an opportunity to live and work in Asia for a year. And so I ended up at a company called Shangri-La Hotels, which was in Singapore, and spent some time at their corporate headquarters in Hong Kong during my year abroad. Just a great opportunity to kind of see the world from a different lens. Came back to Pittsburgh, was looking at, opportunities because it was a one-year opportunity to kind of through the Henry Luce Foundation. So I came back to Pittsburgh, was looking at opportunities. One of the organizations, before I left the city, the founder and the CEO of the organization asked me to serve on the board. I said, I'd love to serve on the board. I just, I'm getting ready to leave town. So he said, well, when you come back. So when I came back, I ran into him again. His name is Bill Strickland. And bottom line is, he asked me to come and take a look at what he was doing over there. And he was running a nonprofit enterprise. And he was, I don't know if you've heard of Bill Strickland, but he's really world renowned as far as building these arts and entertainment centers all across the globe, actually. And so I had a chance to work with him when he was creating the corporation, the Manchester Bidwell Corporation, right around that time. So I had the opportunity to serve as a senior vice president with his organization for a while before I decided to go back into the corporate side. Went from there to organization, financial service organization, PNC. Wanted to get into strategic planning, so I ended up doing strategic planning for a couple of years, then moved into another communications area within the finance communications area. Left there, though, to run a nonprofit. It was a comprehensive community service agency at the time. This is 03 to 09 is I seem to have this like 6-year cycle with the organization. So it was 03 to 09. And it was a comprehensive community service agency from serving young kids, early learning, child development, and youth services to workforce development, neighborhood development, senior services. Very comprehensive. Thoroughly enjoyed it. It was in the Hill District of Pittsburgh, and had a chance to really grow that organization while I was there. It also had an economic development component. And so what a rich experience that was. I stayed there until I was recruited by another organization called Highmark Health. It was a broad healthcare organization. At the time, it was about an $18 billion organization. It's much larger right now, but it was a nonprofit. So technically, I work for a nonprofit of size, of quite size. And very often, when you have healthcare providers, very often they can be nonprofit organizations, similar to universities are huge, but they are also nonprofit organizations. So what I do today through the Advanced Leadership Institute, it really started as a vision back in 2016. Had the opportunity to write a concept for the Advanced Leadership Institute, TALI. We're actually known as TALI now. And we basically partnered with Carnegie Mellon, their Tepper School of Business. And the goal was to create world-class executive leadership programs that are specifically designed to develop Black leaders and their allies, right? We've added recently, just to be more transparent, that it's open, we added some language just to make sure people know that it's not exclusive. We don't apologize for who we serve, but we're also not exclusive in terms of who can participate in our programs. And so I had the chance of doing that as a volunteer for the first number of years. And then in 2021, I had left my organization, Highmark Health at the time, to become the president and CEO of TALI, the Advanced Leadership Institute. The goal was to, continue to build out. We had a lot of success in our first couple of years and continue to, but the goal was to then build it out, not just regionally, but also start to build it nationally. And so that's what we've been doing. So I've been here full time as an employee, as the CEO for 5 years, and we've been able to grow it from when we first started. We had one person as a kind of a contractor, and then in 2021 started to build a team around it. So today we have 6 full-time employees. We continue to build out the work that we do. We have an executive program. We have an emerging leaders program. We have a annual conference that we do. We do something for frontline leaders, and we're starting to do custom programming and looking at how do we stretch what we do into other markets. But right now, a lot of the work that we do is in Pittsburgh. It's more with the emerging leaders program, which is now the Excellence in Leadership program. And then we have the executive program, which is under the National Executive Leadership Academy umbrella. So that's a program where it's for executives and mid-level managers who have higher level aspirations, both locally as well as nationally.
Okay, excellent. So, no, definitely it helps for people to understand sort of where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we have a little bit of technical difficulties. So, I'm doing this through the cell phone with Ev, but it's going out live on all 3 channels. So through the StreamYard, through Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, and we've got quite a few people tuned in. I've got a picture of our guest, Evan Frazier, up on the screen, along with me next to him, a little bit smaller, so you can sort of see him, but you can't see him live. Still not sure what's up with the technology side, but you adjust and you make it work.
Right.
But first, thanks everybody for tuning in. We got some great comments, questions. We're gonna dig into a lot of this stuff, first, always, like we mentioned, nonprofit is still a business, and a lot of things that happen in a nonprofit are the same things that you got to do for business and then some. So now, financing and generating revenue in a nonprofit, how has that changed over the years, and how have you adjusted to that change?
Yeah. So one of the things that I've found is that there's always an evolution, and whatever are your initial streams, you're going to want to broaden those streams and not be completely reliant on just one source. Would also learn with working with nonprofits, and again, in addition to the full-time work that I do, I've been on 30 to 40 different nonprofit boards over the years. So I've seen a lot of different models. And as you look at different organizations, different organizations have different philosophies. But what I've found is that, particularly when you're in a small nonprofit organization, it's really important to figure out, what are your core streams of revenue, and then how do you diversify those streams? You want to strengthen all of them, but you don't want to be over reliant on one, because circumstances can change pretty quickly. And if you're a government contractor and then policy shifts, you could have some problems. So you have to figure out, how do you adapt? How do you continue to push your vision through if that funding stream dries up? If you have a major grant, foundation that's supporting your work, and they'll support you, but they're not going to support you indefinitely. What happens when that support runs low, or they decide they're moving in a different direction, or can't fund you for a variety of reasons? You don't want to be stuck and say, well, I can't continue my work. So you always have to kind of be agile, looking for new revenue streams, finding ways to build and grow the organization, just like you would as an entrepreneur in a small business. You're always looking for customers, always looking for new ways to create opportunities to grow the business and to continue to get your product out there. So very similar from that perspective. I will share a couple insights I found particularly helpful for smaller nonprofits. And that is really important to pay attention to cash flow, and also paying attention to, you want to be particularly cognizant of, restricted versus unrestricted income, right? If you're a nonprofit and most of the revenue is restricted revenue, by that meaning they're giving it to you for a specific program, or they're giving it to you for a very specific purpose. Whereas that's wonderful, but it's also important to be able to have the revenue that will allow you to operate. And usually operations, if you're not getting a specific grant coming for operations specifically, you have to have enough resources to be able to operate. So you can have great money in programs, but if there's no money to operate, then you're going to have, you're not going to be able to stay in business. And so especially as you're starting out, especially as a smaller organization, I recommend often when I'm serving on boards, I'll ask about, well, how much of that revenue you're talking about is restricted versus unrestricted. And you need to have a healthy dose of unrestricted income so that it could go towards what's most needed. Once you get into restricted income, you have to use it for the specific designated purpose. And so that's the big difference.
Okay. No, definitely that's an important distinction, because your cash flow and managing your overhead, in the restricted, that many times that doesn't account for overhead. And then also in your reporting, usually you have to report on, your overhead and how much was used for programming, and, funders use that information to decide if they want to fund you. So, those are some dynamics that are beyond what a for-profit has to even think about.
Yeah, no, it's definitely one of those things you gotta pay attention to as a nonprofit. The whole idea of restricted versus unrestricted income, but also, some of it also comes down to philosophy of the organization too. One thing that I've come to learn over the years, and many have shared this over time, so it's not original, but yeah, I don't know if you've heard the term, no margin, no mission. And that basically is indicating that, look, unless you have a strong, financial standing with the organization, you can't push forward your mission. So you got to have strong finances to be able to have a strong program and to be able to maintain and sustain that program. And so that's why it's so important. Over time, what you also come to learn is, as a nonprofit, you don't want to just break even, because if all you're doing is breaking even, at some point in time, if you have a bad year and you don't have a strong balance sheet, by that meaning you don't have reserves and you haven't made a profit in earlier years to be able to create reserves that will allow you to operate in the future, then you're kind of it's that whole idea of living hand to mouth, and that's not a sign of a healthy organization. So you want to be an organization where you're able to generate net income on the bottom line that can get reinvested into the business, help to create a strong balance sheet so that you can withstand, challenging times. The road is not always super smooth. So you need to have a reserve built so that you can, if you happen to take a loss a year or two, you can survive that and still be in a strong position. And so that should be the goal of nonprofits. If all you're doing is just bringing income, spending all the income that you have, then at the end of the day, all you have to have is one bad year.
Okay.
But let's say you're a $1 million organization every year, and let's say you take a $200,000 loss. Now that may or may not be an issue. If you take a $200,000 loss, for your nonprofit, but you have, $600,000 in the bank, then you'll survive. But if you take a $200,000 loss and you have $100,000 in assets, you're in trouble. You're actually insolvent as a business, and you can't sustain yourself. And so you really need to focus, if you're in the nonprofit sector, like, how do you generate a strong balance sheet? How do you make sure you're earning income every year? And let me also say that, similar to larger businesses, if a larger business, you'll hear the philosophy, some of the larger businesses have strong balance sheets. But if the year, and it's not always being profitable revenue. Now, some of it, there are things that as a nonprofit you want to invest in because it's your mission. Great. Invest in those things because it's your mission, but have other things that can drive the cash value so that you can continue to do the things that are going to be most optimal in achieving your mission. So it's really a balancing act. At the end of the day, for nonprofits, it's about the mission of what you're trying to do. But as I said before, the saying is, no margin, no mission. If you can't, generate enough of a profit so that you can fund your mission, it's going to significantly hinder your ability to do the work that you set out to do.
Right. And what you're talking about is not just nonprofits. It's really also all businesses. It's important to manage your cash flow. It's important to work on your revenue streams. In all business, it's just a little bit more difficult in a nonprofit because you have additional considerations and you have less less levers to pull and less control because you don't directly own it. But those same things, you could be, business owners are in business a lot. If you've been in business, even if you've been in business for a while, many times you're putting your own money back in your company at different periods for cash flow issues and for other things. And planning for the future. I like what you said about, that doesn't mean you shouldn't bring in, profit or extra money and build your balance sheet. I'm sure you remember Mr. Bernard Jones from when we were young. And one of the things, he ran a great nonprofit in Pittsburgh, but one of the things he always talked about was building an endowment fund. And can you talk a little bit about what that is and how that works and why it's so important?
Yeah. So essentially for folks out there, an endowment fund, and I like to think of it more as in terms of reserve funds, because and a true endowment is basically when you put your money into a fund and the principal of the fund always stays there, but the interest that's generated, that's what can be distributed for grants and for purposes. And when you actually have a significant amount of money that you can invest in an endowment fund, then essentially you can have income spinning off of that into perpetuity, right? And so it's a really great thing. And very often, you have institutes within, we'll call it universities, and other structures where you hear the term endow. They endow a chair, or they endow institute or department. Essentially, they're giving a large sum of money and allowing the interest income of that to then fund it basically into perpetuity, which is a wonderful thing. The challenge is you usually have to have a lot of money to be able to have a measurable impact, on, using it as endowment. So in other words, if you put $1 million into endowment, you could pretty much assume that about 5% is usually about what you can count on a regular basis. Usually, it goes between 4 and 5.5% or something like that. Well, let's just say 5%. So you put $1 million, it'll spin off $50,000 a year. The nice thing is that it can be continuously spinning off $50,000 a year, and that's a really wonderful thing. I like the idea, especially when you're starting a small organization or medium-sized organization, is you create, not just an endowment, but if someone's giving you endowment, that's different. That's wonderful. That's for that purpose. But if you're operating a nonprofit and you're trying to figure out what's the best thing to do with my money for a rainy day, maybe it's not an endowment. Maybe it's what they call quasi-endowment, which means it's not necessarily a restricted endowment where only the interest income could be used, but you're creating a reserve fund where you're using it in that way where the interest income is there, but you can use the interest income, but you can use the principal if you really needed it. And the strength of that is it helps you to build your balance sheet so that if you did have a rainy day and, you had, a couple $100,000 loss, maybe the interest income by itself can't cover the deficit. But if you have the full amount in a reserve fund, it gives you more flexibility to use it when it's needed. And so there's strengths and advantages for a true endowment, but there's also strengths to having a quasi-endowment, because then it allows you to have a different type of unrestricted income that can help the organization. It's getting technical, but you could also have a board-restricted endowment so that when it's really needed, the board can help release those funds in a rainy day. But you could still use it as interest income on the regular kind of annual basis. And so I like the idea of quasi-endowments when it's something that you have to build and that you could be needing the reserves in the course of the foreseeable years. That gives you a lot more flexibility.
Okay, great. No, that's perfect. Definitely, once again, appreciate everybody tuning in, your comments, your questions. We're going to go to a couple questions now. And thanks, Ev, for bearing with the technical difficulties of not having you on screen live.
Hey, I'm here with you and this wonderful audience out here, so I'm good.
Right, and we got you with a big smile on the screen, so they can actually see you. So that's cool. So I want to go to a question from Clive, because I think that he talks about how can nonprofits diversify income beyond donations and, let's say, grants as well. Can you give some examples of how you've done that at different organizations you've worked with?
Yeah. No, absolutely. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. So obviously, like you've mentioned, there are definitely grants, there are definitely donations that you can do, and both are needed. So I don't believe getting rid of those things. It's supplementing those things with other areas. So other areas might be fee income. So if you're charging a fee for programs, charging a fee. In our organization, we do as we're doing training for folks, there's a fee that's required. And in our case, what we try to do is get the organizations that are the employers who are investing in their talent to pay the fee, so that it doesn't become a burden to the participant. And so, but it's still fee income. It's coming from the organization for their participation in the program. And so in our case, and then another way to do it would be sponsorships, so not just grants, but sponsorships. So you're creating value for sponsor organizations who want to be connected to the work that you do, or connected to reserving space so that participants that are in their organization can benefit. Creating ways that, you generate fee income and provide value for it. And so sponsorships, in addition to grants and donations, I would also say, tuition or fee income in our business is something that we utilize as well. And then we also, one of the things that we start doing is we start doing some custom programming, so that, and we charge a fee for that. And so, you can create business lines, even in a nonprofit, that add value to organizations and individuals. And so using that as a way to create fee income is a really good thing. And so you want to get to the point where you have multiple streams. The other way the other possibilities, sometimes you can get government funding. And government funding is wonderful when you can get it, because, usually it becomes fairly stable over the years. As long as the policy doesn't change, as long as you keep the relationships there, it can be a longer term sustainable, but you never want to be completely reliant on it either, because if the policy changes, then that broad stream income, can go away. And it's very hard for foundations and others to make up that difference. So it's a blessing, but you have to, be very mindful of how do you keep cultivating, whether it's government relationships, it's making sure that's why, usually when you have a executive director or a CEO, they spend so much time building and nurturing relationships, because that is really critical for securing funds, as well as, trying to think as entrepreneurs as you can about, well, what product or service can we provide as an organization where we can charge a fee that people would pay for, and that then becomes a part of it. Very often you hear people say, start a business and that'll then pay for itself. Now, from my experience, most of the organizations that actually do that, it's great, but it doesn't take care of all your bills and all of the expenses, right? And so it becomes a part of the portfolio, so you still need, in most cases, you still need to raise money. You still need to, donations, you still need grants, consider sponsorships, but what's the fee income? What are potential government grants? Really looking broadly at all your revenue streams to try to determine, what can bring you the greatest value. It depends on the type of organization that you have. It will help give you a sense for, what type of revenue streams make the most sense for your business.
No, that makes sense. And then also, as you're thinking, from the business hat, many nonprofits have retail
Yeah. Oh yeah.
as part of their revenue streams.
Yeah.
Um, Many of them have rental income as part of the revenue streams.
There's, there's rental income. There's if you happen to be in the arts, there are fees for tickets to participate in events that way. You have ability to, when you think about like different types of nonprofits, it'll open up new ways of thinking about, like if you're in a nonprofit but have access to real estate, it's rental income. It's can you? I've been in organizations where we had space, we ended up renovating the space, attracting business to come in, and we became a landlord, and that became, a sustainable source because it was long-term, steady income that came to us with some need for. Like ongoing maintenance types of things, but as a whole, it was a profitable, sustainable source of income. Now that was just one, but we needed many streams of income to make it work. So it depends on the type of business or the type of nonprofit that you're running. But looking at the assets, where are you strong? Where are your opportunities? And then thinking, how can I leverage those opportunities to create economic value for our organization?
Definitely. And even memberships, there's a lot of nonprofit membership organizations. So, creativity is key. We talk about the 3 key things that business owners need to do to be successful, especially if they're small. You got to be proactive, you got to be creative, and you got to be flexible. And that counts, doubly for nonprofits. But looking at your assets, looking at the trends, and looking at where you can create value is going to drive your revenue streams. So makes a lot of sense. I got another question here. So this is from David, but he's saying, can nonprofits really make a profit legally? So I'll let you tackle that.
Absolutely. So the answer is yes. Nonprofits can make a profit legally, and in fact, now we're using terms. So you might call it net income instead of net profit in a nonprofit. So in a for-profit, you'll say it's net profit. Similarly, we might call it net income in a nonprofit, right? And so, and yes, you can earn net income, positive net income in a nonprofit. In fact, you want to earn positive net income as a nonprofit so that you can build your balance sheet. You can have a reserve so that you can build for the future. You can reinvest it in the services that you're providing or the products that you're creating. There are different nuances to ways of doing it. So for example, let's say you're a nonprofit, but then you decide, we're going to go into the consulting business. Now, the consulting business might have nothing to do with your core business. In that case, if you're creating net profit, then you could create it, but you got to pay taxes on it, right? Because it may fall outside of the nonprofit provision, right? But if you're in a business, it's consistent with the mission of your organization as a nonprofit, then it still falls on the nonprofit umbrella in that case. And I can think of a number of examples of boards I'm on. I can think of some cultural organizations where a core part of their business, like admissions to exhibits and to shows and those kind of things, that's all part of their core business. Yes, they can operate a profit. They should, because otherwise it's hard to maintain the work that they do. But some of these same organizations may have a parking component where they're charging for parking. Now, parking may not be as consistent with their specific mission, so they may have to pay taxes on the income that they get from that particular service. That's why you have to have good CPAs and good accountants that you're working with that can help you, and good strong auditors that are a part of your overall operation to make sure that you're strong, doing things in the right way. But yes, you can earn profit if but you just have to be careful that if you're doing it outside of your core mission as a nonprofit, then there may be pieces you have to pay taxes on. And there's other provisions like what percentage your business can be ancillary versus core, those kind of things. But yes, you absolutely can earn profit. In nonprofit, it's probably considered net income as opposed to, net income as opposed to net profit. So I think depends on how you use the term. So I think we have to be careful sometimes with nonprofits of using the term profit. But as far as positive net income, yes, 100% you can earn that. You just want to work closely with your CPA so that you're accounting for it in the right way.
Okay, great. So now, you've worked at large nonprofits, smaller nonprofit, you created a nonprofit. Now, a lot of nonprofits are small, and a lot of people open a small nonprofit. And, I'm kind of quasi not a fan of small nonprofits just because it could be super difficult to make it work. And a lot of times, there's probably too many nonprofits, and, collaborating with someone else might be a better use of effort because there is a lot of effort and cost in just even setting up a nonprofit.
Yeah. So one of the things that you can do, though, as a small nonprofit, which will make life a lot easier, and that is the use of a fiscal sponsor, right? And so basically what a fiscal sponsor is, it's an organization that's already a charitable nonprofit, what's called a 501c3. It's a kind of the federal designation for a nonprofit organization. A charitable nonprofit, I should say, because there are different facets. You can have a nonprofit that's not necessarily a charitable designation, but we're talking about nonprofit 501c3 charitable organizations. So you can have, in order for you to get like grant funding and for people who write donations to your organization to get a tax, to be able to, declare it as a tax write-off, they have to give money to a 501c3 charitable organization. And the rules for maintaining that type of organization, you have to have a board of directors. You have to have certain things in place that will to allow you to remain a charitable nonprofit. Now, for some who are going into, and Andy, I think this gets to your point. So for some people who are going into that space of starting a nonprofit, particularly a smaller nonprofit, you could spend half your time just doing administrative things, trying to set up the accounting system, trying to figure out how all this stuff works administratively, that it takes your focus away from the mission that you're really set out to do. And so in those circumstances, I recommend that, maybe you don't create your own nonprofit. What you do is you create a nonprofit. You create an organization that then uses a fiscal agent. So technically you become a partner or a project or a part of that nonprofit organization. You can still operate interdependently. So it allows you to start the organization, focus on your mission, but you already have the infrastructure already built with the fiscal agent. So that's an easy way to do it. And in fact, our own organization, the first few years, we used a fiscal agent. We used the Poise Foundation, which is a 501c3 charitable organization, to play that role for us when we first started, till we got to the point after about 3 years where we were ready to get much larger investment, create more formalized board of directors, and take all the steps, get your own insurances, get your own, all those things. The financial and fiduciary responsibility when you have a fiscal sponsor as an organization, they assume those risks for you. So it takes away a lot of stress and a lot of burden. You can still accept grants, from foundations. You can still have provide charitable donation status for those who give money to your organization. So it's really a great thing, and they usually charge 10% or something like that of the revenue that you bring in, but it's worth it because for you to get your own accounting department or of things, it'll cost you a whole lot more than that, and you don't have the time to focus on that. So it's a great way to get started. So we started that way, the organization Tally, and after about 3 years, we ended up creating the Institute as a separate 501c3 organization, which is our own charitable. And so we moved away from a fiscal sponsor at that point, and we created the infrastructure using partners in our own wherewithal to be able to manage at that point. And so I do recommend for smaller organizations, where you really need to focus in on your mission at first. It allows you to, kind of get a basis so that when you're ready to step out, you already have the operating experience. You already know what the cash flow looks like. And then it gives you a much better chance to be able to be successful in sustaining your own charitable nonprofit organization.
Okay, no, that's amazing. You actually answered Jonathan's question. He said, "How can small nonprofits build strong partnerships?" And that's probably one of the best partnerships that you can develop because, like you said, it can cost a lot and take a lot of time. That you don't necessarily have to go through all that to be able to fulfill your mission. And being able to not take on all that responsibility up front makes a huge difference. So definitely there's never enough time to talk about key valuable insights from our guests, great guests like you. But we're coming up on 9. But what I always like to do is ask our guests to share 3 key takeaways from what we discussed with the audience so that, they can really have something to focus on going away. And plus, many times people can't remember more than 3 things. So it just gives people 3 things to focus on starting tomorrow that can help them be more successful in what they're doing. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes. I'm going to play a short video, and then, if you can come back and share 3 key things before we close out, that would be great.
Will do.
All right, cool. So then let me, where's the video that I want to share? Okay, the 99 proven tips. Okay, so there we go. Hi, Andrew here, and I'm excited to announce the launch of our new book, 99 Proven Tips to Accelerate Your Masterpreneur Journey. 5 years, 33 incredible guests, hundreds of powerful business lessons, and now it's all in one place. Introducing 99 Proven Tips to Accelerate Your Masterpreneur Journey, a brand new book built from the insights, wisdom, and strategies shared by the guest experts of our podcast, Leadership Live at 8:05, Talking Small Business. Inside, you'll discover actionable tips on how to launch smarter.
So if you have an idea that you have researched and you know who your customer is, and you think that you've got the experience you need, now is a perfect time to start a business. But remember, start as a side hustle first.
Grow faster.
So sales is about problem solving, not about manipulating. You have to understand the math of your business, the sales math.
Lead more effectively.
You shouldn't expect someone to be you. You have to understand and create processes to basically train people on how to handle certain situations and basically set people on the right path, right? So they can become successful within your organization.
And scale your business with confidence.
Bet on yourself and not be afraid to take risks and to know that you have within you the ability to accomplish your dreams and accomplish your goals.
Think like an entrepreneur. Now, I know there may be many entrepreneurs listening, but there may be some who aren't entrepreneurs. That's all well and good. I'm here to say entrepreneurship is not just something you do, it's a way that you think. And the characteristics of an entrepreneur's thinking are creativity, resourcefulness, courage, resilience, and passion.
This isn't theory, it's practical advice straight from entrepreneurs and thought leaders who have done it. 5 years of conversations, 33 voices of experience, and now 99 tips to accelerate your masterpreneur journey. Get your copy today. Pre-order now to reserve your signed copy. Click the button below or scan the QR code to order from www.sbpro.com/99-tips. All right, welcome back to Leadership Live at 8:05. I'm your host, Andrew Frazier. Our topic tonight is making a profit as a nonprofit. Similar to for-profits, it's important for you to generate revenue as a nonprofit. Our guest is Evan Frazier, my brother, out of Pittsburgh, PA tonight, and he shares some tremendous insights about running a successful nonprofit and generating revenues for it. And just also these strategies will work for for-profit businesses as well. So before I let him go, I definitely want to have him share 3 key takeaways because we did cover a lot of valuable insights while we were here. So what are the 3 key takeaways that you want people to have from our show tonight, Ed?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I would say my 3 would be first start with mindset, right? And the mindset, and I mentioned before that, it's really an understanding and mindset that, no margin, no mission, which basically, essentially what we're saying is, you gotta really focus on, generating positive net income because you don't want to be in a space where you become a hand-to-mouth organization. And because otherwise everything becomes an emergency. So that's the first thing. So no mission, no margin, no mission. Second, I would say is, maximize as a nonprofit, you want to maximize your unrestricted income. So that's income that's not designated for a specific purpose because then that will give you the flexibility to operate in a full way and put the resources where it's needed. When you have restricted income, and that's important too for certain programs and those kind of things, because if you're given money, you have to, be mindful of spending it in the intended purpose, right? And so there's always opportunities though for unrestricted income. So make sure you focus on how do you maximize unrestricted income for your nonprofit organization. And then the third thing I'll say is build a reserve. Just with any kind of business, you're going to have fluctuations in the market. You're going to have years where there's going to be circumstances beyond your control where, things will go up and go down, and you can't control all the circumstances. But if you have a strong reserve, you can weather the storm. If you don't, it goes back to that. If you have, you become a hand-to-mouth organization. When the market goes down or things aren't going as you intended, you're in crisis, and you don't want to have to be in crisis mode. You want to be in a place where you understand, that you have to adjust, but you want to have the flexibility and the strength as an organization to know that you can make it through certain types of fluctuations that will inevitably happen from time to time for nonprofits or small businesses. So mindset, no margin, no mission, maximize unrestricted income, and build a reserve.
Okay, excellent. So no, those are great. So when you're talking mindset, it's key, and not only for nonprofits, for profits. One of my clients, had a school, and her goal was to have the best school ever. It's a for-profit school, and we had to have a conversation about how good is your school going to be if it closes. And, the mindset has to be, we have to generate what we need to generate, as well as spend less than that if you're going to stay open and be able to deliver on your mission. So, that's where the margin comes in. So very important to keep in mind the end goal. Of course, maximizing unrestricted income for a nonprofit, but also for a for-profit. If you have income, you got places it might need to go. It might need to go into inventory. It might need to go into investments or equipment. So, you have to also have income beyond that to fund the company. So, making sure that you have income beyond what you just need to survive, and then building your reserve. Like you said, things happen in business and in life, and it's important to save and put away some money so that you have the financial strength to weather any storms that come along. So this has been great. I think it's been valuable. We've gotten great feedback and comments and questions from the audience, and always appreciate that. So thanks again for joining us. Thanks, Marcella and Jack and Bob, Kelly, Russ, all your comments, questions, Daniel, Rochelle, John, Clive. So once again, Ev, thanks for joining me tonight. Definitely, for those of you who are tuned in, you've got his LinkedIn profile in the chat. So if you want to reach out to him via LinkedIn, you've got it on the screen now, and it's on the chat. And then also, if you want to learn more about Evan's organization, the Advanced Leadership Institute, or TALI, we've got the website there as well. So definitely, anything you want to share before we close out, Ev?
Well, Andy, I just want to thank you for the work that you're doing. Your podcast, you've been the most consistent podcast guy I know, and I just really respect that so much. It's always great information, and I'm always honored to be a part of your show here.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Thanks for joining me. Hang on for a minute if you can while I close things out.
Sure.
Okay, great. So
thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Thank you. So, once again, always appreciate everybody tuning in. Each week we have a great show with exciting things. So, next week as well, looking forward to a new topic and a new guest. We're into May now, Cinco de Mayo. So happy Cinco de Mayo, if that's something that you were celebrating. And, also, I guess we had Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you yesterday. Before we close out, we're just, sharing our upcoming events for the Small Business Pro University. So we're actually going to have our Masterpreneur Growth Symposium on Friday, July 31st at the Park Avenue Club in Florham Park, New Jersey. It's a full-day symposium where we're going to be talking about re-engineering small business growth and it's designed for entrepreneurs, advisors, and institutions. So definitely put that on your calendar. Hope you can join us. Also put a link in the chat so you can learn more about it and register. So hopefully you can join us then. And as part of the symposium, we're going to have our first ever Masterpreneur of the Year Awards celebration. And we're going to provide awards to key entrepreneurs who have developed into Masterpreneurs, as well as Masterpreneur growth architects and institutions that have focused and led in the support of entrepreneurial development, from being just an entrepreneur to becoming a masterpreneur. So hopefully you can join us then. So at the end of the day, the more that you know, the faster and more successfully your business is going to grow.
Thank you for listening to Leadership Live at 8:05, Talking Small Business. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Leadership Live is one of the many valuable resources provided through the Small Business Pro University, empowering business owners to learn, profit, and grow. Find out more at sbpro.u.com.